Coin traders, what is going on? Thanks for joining me for the show. We are back. Sorry, it has been a couple months since the last video, but finally decided to do an update. Now, hopefully you have been following me over here on Twitter because I have been active posting updates and all of that. And so, yeah, I actually wanted to start off talking about the tweet I made a couple of days ago. And essentially, this tweet was talking about how if we did get stuck continued in this pattern, and we actually did see a little bit of rejection from this downtrend resistance line on this kind of falling wedge type pattern, then actually that would see prices pulling back and testing about 25,000 down to about 25,300. Now, obviously, we can see that that did not happen. So even flipping over to Bitcoin, you can see massive breakout and obviously a lot of continuation. Now, a lot of this was off of the speculation that we're going to see a potential ETF coming out, and so BlackRock actually did apply for that. Now, in addition, we've also seen a lot of growth and rallying out of the stock market as well, so we could likely see a big runoff and a rub-off, for a lot of correlation to that, since typically we have seen the S&P be actually correlated to that. So if we actually check out the SPX right now, you can see huge, nice upside move, probably going to be pulling back and actually seeing a back test of some of these trend lines and a lot of these previous resistance lines, hopefully now flipping into support. So that's what we're actually expecting right now out of the S&P. So if that does continue to see rub off into the crypto space, then what we're actually looking at is a lot of continued upside move. But obviously, after such explosive growth, we're still going to need to pull back now and actually find a support somewhere, since we have confirmed a massive breakout. And if we actually pull up volume, we can see a lot of nice volume too, especially day over day. So only about 4 hours into the current daily candle. So we are going to see how the current daily candle does get situated here, but ultimately we could see a little bit of consolidation, which we'll talk about here in a second. Or at some point we are going to need to see a retracement, probably likely pulling back to test support down to about 29,000 or even down to about 28.5, potentially all the way down to about 28. Realistically, at this point, because we've seen such a strong rally above this trend line, I think it would actually be a kind of far stretch to see a retracement all the way down to this trend line. But obviously in crypto space, anything is possible. However, we aren't expecting that to be a likely scenario and outcome as well. But one of the things we do need to be aware of is an extremely strong resistance point up overhead at about 21K, down to the closing resistance point, which we're experiencing rejection from right now at about 30,290. So, for example, zooming all the way back, you can see big point of support on the 2021 rally, big point of support on the bounce move here, and then obviously a big point of consolidation right at this level, and then the previous rejection before pulling back. And so if we actually want to go ahead and talk about the VPVR volume profile visible range, which is the volume based on price levels instead of by time like we typically see on the bottom here. If we can actually smash through the 30,000 to about 31,000 level, that should set the tone for a continued upside bullish rally to test pretty much up to about 40,000. Now, realistically, I think if we can break above to about 31 to 32,000, we would see a little bit of period of consolidation and establishing this period as kind of a little bit more of that stabilization and longer term accumulation level before the bulls do see their next run up to test about 40,000. So again, I think because we are looking at such strong moves day over day for Bitcoin right now, that there's actually not that much of an indication that we're going to see a pretty substantial pullback. So I think because we've seen 5% plus days in a row, that's actually an extremely bullish sign for a lot of continued follow through, which we typically need to see on these type of breakouts. So one of the great things about this too, from a standpoint, is that we've actually seen a complete explosion of of the dominance here for Bitcoin. So right now we're looking at 51.22. So actually just completely annihilated this big zone that was resistance for Bitcoin dominance from about 48,000 all the way up until about 50,000. So a very extremely resistive zone. And now we are sitting right on top of that. So we are looking at this kind of essentially cup and handle pattern. And so if that does play out in the typical sense and what we can expect for essentially a target to the upside, and this is extremely speculative too, but potentially a run up to about 60% would be kind of one of the targets of the upside. So actually zooming out, you can see how that does align with previous resistance, almost support, resistance, and then also kind of more or less support. So I would actually expect from about 58K up until about 60,000 is where we might end up seeing Bitcoin resistance top out. And now, if you have been following me over on Twitter, one of the tweets that I did make earlier was talking about how when money flows into crypto out of fear of the financial system, it's actually going to flow heavily into Bitcoin. Now, typically in the space, when we do see money that flows into crypto out of speculation for the blockchain space, and typically a lot of optimism about how blockchain is going to be the future and things like that, that's when we see a lot more money flow heavily into altcoins. But right now, we're seeing money heavily flow into Bitcoin, which does show a fear of a lot of the global financial ecosystem right now. And so because of that, that's actually one of the reasons why we are looking at a potential target up to about 58 to 60% for Bitcoin dominance here, which does mean that Bitcoin is going to outperform most every other altcoin. But keep in mind too that right now we are looking at a little period of resistance, since previously on this chart, big point of support, effectively resistance, and then a period of support and support again. So 52 is also going to be extremely supportive, and I wouldn't be surprised if we actually do start to see some of the altcoins catch up while Bitcoin does start to do a little bit more of a sideways consolidation. So that's really going to be the kicker right now. If we can see Bitcoin start to consolidate, or actually this is the dominance, flipping over to Bitcoin. It's already started right now, but if we can actually see potentially into the weekend more or less, for example, we could see Bitcoin go sideways, which would allow the altcoins to rally, and then thereby would actually decrease the dominance, therefore rejecting off of 52%. That would be the scenario that we would have to see, because right now I don't really see too many cases where we're actually going to see a huge pullback from Bitcoin, yet continue to see the alts rally as well, thereby making that resistance pull back. So two scenarios, either going to be that Bitcoin continues to rally and dominance continues to climb, or we're going to see Bitcoin travel sideways, consolidate a little bit longer, and then have the alts continue to rally, which would in fact end up pulling the dominance back down. Personally, I'm still a little bit more of the belief that we will see dominance start climbing a little bit more. I think there's a very good chance that we could see the dominance maybe sit for a couple of days or so, but ultimately I do still see in the near longer term anyway, a little bit more of that rally for Bitcoin, especially as we do start to enter a lot of the speculation about the upcoming halving next year in 2024. So I actually do want to flip over and talk about the total market cap right now. So we're looking at 1.147 trillion right now for market cap for all cryptos, including a Bitcoin. And so essentially this chart has had this drawing for a while with this big zone indicated. And I think we are going to see a little bit of a resistance point, especially after such an explosive growth. So down to about 120 or 1.2 trillion is actually going to be our upper level for resistance for the crypto markets right now for all altcoins and Bitcoin as well for total market cap. So essentially what this means is that I actually do expect a little bit more sideways trading and rejection from this big zone, probably pulling back and testing about the $1 trillion level again, before finally breaking bullish into this longer term growth cycle, since we have been in this more or less longer term falling wedge since the 2021 bull cycle. So if we do in fact reject from both this zone, which also does align from this resistance trend line, this falling trend line on the longer term wedge for this overall crypto market cap pattern, I wouldn't be surprised to see a pullback to about 1 trillion like we said, and then an explosive growth to the upside if in fact we do see continued upside from the bulls, barring any sort of bearish news catalyst. So now I want to flip over to Bitcoin and talk about some technicals here, specifically the RSI, because we are looking at on the 4-hour right now being at about 88. So flipping over into the day, we can see that we actually are starting to break into the overbought levels. So experiencing a little bit of a sign, especially since we have smashed up against a previous resistance point, that's a pretty good indication that likely we're going to see this roll over and that we are going to experience a little bit more of that pullback. It's just going to be now where we actually see that support. So I'm personally going to be expecting about 28,400 down to about 28,000 at the low point. But the higher we actually can maintain support, the increased likelihood does start to occur of a quicker breakthrough of this big overhead resistance point. So for example, if we actually consolidate on the current level, that does start to increase the likelihood of a continued upside move and growth that actually would start to smash through that big resistance point at 31K a lot quicker than, for example, if we did pull back to that $28,000 level. So if bulls can maintain that, then that actually would be an extremely bullish sign for a lot of upside growth. And right now, we're actually not seeing that much of bearish pressure come in. So we have seen a lot of nice bullish volume on this upside move. So definitely no signs of this trend changing yet, especially as long as we start to see and keep seeing a lot of this bullish volume flowing in. That's going to continue to push the price upside, and we are going to be breaking through that $31,000 level. Right now, the shorter time frames are in control, so until those start to change the trend, we're not going to start to see a high come in and actually see a retracement. So that is why we do start to focus on some of the shorter time frames right now. So for example, like the hourly and the 15-minute, and we are also maintaining uptrends for all of these type of patterns. So once that actually does switch, then we will flip over into the hourly and then also into the 4-hour. And then that pretty much is going to be solidifying and guaranteeing that higher low coming in for some of those longer term charts. And that is where we do start to look to consolidation, have the RSI cool off and actually see sideways trading, which would allow the altcoins to rally, pull back the dominance. And then at that point, we would have a great opportunity for Bitcoin to actually rally and break above that 31K resistance point. So yeah, that is pretty much what I am expecting. A lot of nice, fun upside gains over the last couple of days. Congrats to all the bulls having fun in this nice little pop-off rally here, but just know that it's not really sustainable to have this continue day after day. So we are going to need to go into a little bit of period of consolidation would be the best opportunity right now, but also pulling back and establishing a higher level of support's a pretty good sign and much needed thing to happen for healthy financial markets as well. So either scenario is going to be a great bullish opportunity. We will see heading into the weekend what we're going to expect out of those, but that's pretty much the most likely common scenario right now. And so, yeah, definitely let me know your thoughts and comments and predictions and all that stuff down in the comments sections below. That is going to go ahead and wrap the show for today, though. Thank you for sticking with me to the end. Hope everyone enjoyed. Do appreciate all the love and support. As always, does mean so much. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up, like, and subscribe if you haven't done so just yet. Stay safe, take care, everyone, and I'll catch you back in the next video.